Greetings and salutations. Today we'll be covering the Scottish Enigma of Bible John. The mysterious case of Bible John is one of the many that still haunts the annals of Scottish criminal history. Between 1968 and 1969, a series of heinous crimes took place in Glasgow, Scotland, leaving 3 young women brutally murdered. Their killer, dubbed Bible John, remains unidentified to this day, making this case one of the most perplexing and extensive manhunts in Scotland's history. Bible John's victims shared striking similarities. They were all young, brunette women between the ages of 25 and 32. And it must be noted that their tragic encounter with the murderer occurred in Barrowland Ballroom. This was a popular dance hall and music venue, which would unwittingly become the backdrop for their fateful encounters. The perpetrator's identity, however, remains a baffling enigma, eluding investigators for decades. The magnitude of this unsolved case led to a significant milestone in Scottish criminal investigations. For the first time, the Crown Office authorized the publication of a composite drawing for a murder suspect, hoping to prompt public assistance in solving the mystery. However, despite this extraordinary step, the identity of Bible John remains hidden in the shadows of uncertainty. What seems to set Bible John apart is the eerie connection to religious themes. Witnesses recall the killer repeatedly quoting from the Bible, and it was said that he vehemently condemned adultery in the presence of his final victim. These chilling details earned him his infamous moniker, which has remained with him throughout the years. Suspicions have arisen throughout the years to the potential identity of Bible John, particularly in relation to convicted serial killer and adult assaulter Peter Tobin. Tobin's known movements and modus operandi bear similarities to those of Bible John, leading to a momentary glimmer of hope for answers. However, thorough police investigations eventually cleared Tobin of any involvement, plunging the case into a deeper abyss of uncertainty. Decades have passed, and the identity of Bible John continues to elude the grasp of justice. The memory of the 3 young women and the torment inflicted upon them remains unresolved. The unsolved nature of this chilling case serves as a reminder that some mysteries defy explanation, leaving behind an everlasting sense of dread. In the shadows of Glasgow, a gruesome discovery would be made. On February 23rd, 1968, this would be the lifeless body of Patricia Docker, a 25-year-old auxiliary nurse who was found laying naked in the doorway of a lock-up garage, a mere few yards away from her Longside Place home. The scene revealed a chilling tableau of violence. She had been found with marks of extensive blunt force trauma inflicted upon her face and head. Patricia had met her harrowing fate through strangulation, and this was noted due to a powerful ligature mark being found around her neck, potentially caused by a belt. The crime scene offered few tangible clues, as her handbag, her watch, and her clothing were nowhere to be found. As investigators delved into the perplexing web of Patricia Docker's final moments, a witness would emerge. This resident recalled hearing a haunting cry the previous evening, a desperate plea echoing throughout the night. Said plea was stated to be, "Leave me alone." The testimony provided a glimpse into the terror that had unfolded, yet tangible evidence remained elusive. However, the revelation that Patricia was a nurse at Mercerkink Hospital, which was shared by an ambulanceman who had retrieved her body, offered a critical lead. Patricia Docker was a married mother estranged from her husband. She had set out for a night of revelry and fun at the majestic ballroom on Hope Street. However, fate had other plans. Drawn by the allure of Barrowland Ballroom's over 25's night, she spent the majority of her evening there. When Patricia returned home, her parents assumed she had spent the night with her friends. However, they were unaware of the tragedy that had befallen their daughter. Days later, the truth emerged. Patricia had left the majestic ballroom to venture out into the night, which had led her to her untimely fate at the Barrowland. A post-mortem autopsy conducted at the University of Glasgow Medical School unveiled the horrors inflicted upon Patricia. The cause of death was strangulation with no clear, visible signs of adult assault on her body. The state of rigor mortis pointed to her life having been cut short just after she had left the Barrowland Ballroom. The chilling sequence of events was surmised as a forceful abduction followed by a barrage of punches and kicks to her face and head, punctuated by her repeated pleas to be left alone. The assailant then subjected Patricia to the ultimate violation before sealing her fate via strangulation. Her lifeless body would then be stripped of clothing, left with only one shoe nearby, and callously discarded at the lockup garage she was found at. Later, as the moonlit night of August 16th, 1969 descended upon Glasgow, a 31-year-old mother of three named Jemima MacDonald would be making her way to the familiar embrace of the Barrowland Ballroom, eager to lose herself in the rhythmic melodies as she had entrusted the care of her children to her sister. Unbeknownst to Gemma, this fateful evening would mark the beginning of a chilling encounter that would forever alter the course of her life. Amidst the lively dance floor, she caught the attention of a young man whose appearance belied the sinister intentions lurking beneath his polished face. Described as a well-dressed, well-spoken, and possessing an air of confidence, this enigmatic figure was noted to stand between 6 feet and 6 feet 2 inches, with a slim build that masked the darkness hidden beneath. His dark brown hair, streaked with fair strands, framed his face, while occasional biblical quotes escaped his lips, leaving an eerie impression on those engaged in conversation with him. As the night progressed, witnesses noticed Gemma in the company of this mysterious individual. They observed them leaving shortly after midnight on August 17th. Seemingly, she had been entranced by his allure and presence. With her path set towards Main Street or Landrecy Street, he had supposedly been leading her home. This would be preceded by her vanishing into the depths of the night around 12:40 a.m. Little did anyone know that this would be the last time Gemma would be seen alive. Concern would grip her sister as the hours progressed into an agonizing wait for Gemma's return. Whispers began to circulate, carrying fragments of a disturbing tale. It was said that children had been overheard discussing a ghastly discovery within a dilapidated tenement building on Macheath Street. Fueled by an overwhelming sense of dread, Gemma's sister, Margaret, took it upon herself to explore this abandoned structure, hoping that her sister's fate had not been sealed in said building. It was there that a moment would forever be etched in her memory, as she stumbled upon the lifeless body of her sister, who had been brutally battered and discarded, lying face down. Beside her rested her shoes and stockings, who bore a silent witness to the unfathomable horror that had transpired. The subsequent post-mortem examination unveiled the extent of her suffering. She had endured a horrendous violation and had been subjected to a merciless barrage of blows, particularly directed towards her face. Her life had been extinguished by the tightening of a grip around her throat with her own stocking. The time between her murder and the discovery of her body had been an approximate 30 hours. Unlike Patricia Docker, Gemma was fully clothed, though her undergarments bore the scars of her assailant's rage. Diligent work from the police yielded valuable eyewitness accounts which painted a vivid picture of the man who had shared Jenna's final moments. Door-to-door inquiries revealed yet another fragment within this chilling puzzle. A woman recalled echoes of a female scream piercing the night air, a haunting chorus that would forever be etched in her memory. Yet without a precise time attached to her testimony, the police themselves were found grasping at straws. Though they now had more pieces to the puzzle, it only left them with more questions. The case progresses further in the eerie stillness of a dreadful Halloween morning, when the lifeless body of 29-year-old Helen Puttock was discovered by a man walking his dog in the shadowed alleyways of Scotstoun, Glasgow. Behind a tenement building on Earl Street, Helen's battered form lay down a drainpipe, partially stripped of her dignity, the signs of a violent struggle etched on her brutalized face. Mirroring the two previous murders, she had more plainly been noted to have suffered a heinous violation before her final threads of life were cut, as her assailant twisted her own stockings around her neck, strangling her. The aftermath revealed a grim tableau of scattered belongings and an inhuman display of chaos inflicted upon Helen. Her handbag, a repository of her personal belongings, was conspicuously absent. The only remains of its contents were strewn near her lifeless body. The soles of her feet and shoes bore the marks of a desperate struggle. They were stained by grass and weeds, and it seemed that in a desperate bid to escape, she had attempted to scale a nearby railway embankment, leaving traces of her determination etched upon the terrain. Yet all her efforts were for naught, as the dark assailant prevailed. It must be noted that she had a deep bite mark on her upper thigh, which served as a reminder of the violent savagery she had been met with. Once more, as the tale unfolded, she had been at the Barrowland Ballroom as her life was snuffed out. Supposedly, they had encountered two men bearing the common name of John. One of these individuals, a self-proclaimed slaughterer hailing from Castmilk, had mingled with Jenna, while the other was a well-spoken enigma who chose to withhold details of his residence. Their paths had been entwined for over an hour within the hollowed halls of the ballroom. That is, until time came to depart. John, Jenna's dance partner, ventured towards George Square to embark on a bus, while Helen, accompanied by her mysterious suitor, and Jenna embarked on a taxi ride, carving a path towards the labyrinthian streets of Glasgow. It was during this transformative journey that the cryptic layers of the killer's psyche began to surface, revealing glimpses of a twisted mindset. Jean, the sole witness of the unfolding nightmare, would later recount her conversation with Helen's companion, two detectives, unraveling the threads of the disturbed soul who is believed to have slain her sister. The figure was apparently shrouded in religiosity and spoke of the ancient tales of Moses from the Old Testament. Said Old Testament was his weapon of choice. In the confines of the cab, he condemned the Barrowland as an adulterous den of iniquity, voicing his vehement disdain for married women who dared venture into its halls. With a heavy heart, Jean left the taxi at Kelso Street, casting a final gaze to the vehicle with her sister and her mysterious religious suitor as it veered towards Earl Street. As the layers of this mystery unraveled, a sinister pattern began to emerge. A common thread woven through the tapestry of these unspeakable crimes: the act of strangulation, particularly the similarity between how all three victims had been strangled. In a chilling display of callousness, the killer had orchestrated a cruel charade. Each victim was lured to their doorstep under the pretense of safety, only to be met with an untimely demise just yards away from their homes. The familiarity of these surroundings, which was once a haven of safety, had now been transformed into the sinister stage where their lives would be cruelly extinguished. In the quest to uncover the truth behind the heinous crimes attributed to Bible John, potential suspects would emerge from the shadows, each casting their own lingering shadow over the case. Amongst them, one name surfaced as a top suspect, a figure etched in the memories of former detective Chief Inspector Les Brown. This suspect, whose arrest in 1969 had seemed promising, would shortly become shrouded in uncertainty. According to Brown, the suspect's encounter with a young woman in the Barrowland Ballroom had set off alarm bells, triggering a surge of apprehension amongst investigators. Yet, despite the eerie resemblance to facial composites and the suspect's initial description, along with the similarity of either not providing an address or providing a false address, he was ultimately released from custody. The absence of the noticeably overlapping teeth, which were so vehemently described by witnesses, overshadowing the mounting evidence that had pointed towards him as a person of interest. Years later, in a conversation with a fellow detective who had escorted the same suspect to a hospital following his arrest, Brown uncovered a particular twist. The suspect, having sustained injuries during a skirmish, had required stitches. However, the moment his handcuffs had been removed, he seized the opportunity to flee, leaving behind a cloud of uncertainty. It was during this incident that the suspect had also falsely identified himself as John White, adding yet another layer to this perplexing puzzle. It must be noted that in a courageous move to clear his name, said suspect had voluntarily offered up a DNA sample, responding to Brown's assertions in his 2005 autobiography. The results essentially eliminated him as a viable suspect, further deepening the enigma. In 1983, Startshire police received a puzzling communication from an unidentified man who had an air of conviction. He proclaimed to possess irrefutable knowledge that his acquaintance was none other than Bible John himself. Astonishingly, both the informant and his friend had grown up in the tight-knit community of Cranhill in Glasgow, their paths intersecting with Barrowland Ballroom during the tumultuous 1960s. According to the informant, his revelation had come to light after stumbling upon an article in the Evening Times, published 5 years prior to the moment he had called, due to a sudden realization having stricken him like a lightning bolt. According to the informant, his friend had been the elusive perpetrator behind a string of ghastly murders, and he believed this with resolute determination. The informant would share his knowledge, leaving authorities grappling with an unexpected twist. Their investigation took yet another interesting turn as they traced the suspect to the Netherlands, where he had embarked on a new life as a carpenter and married a Dutch woman. Yet, just as this tantalizing lead beckoned, silence enveloped the anonymous informant, along with any further communication from the suspect, once more leaving the case mired in the shadows of uncertainty. In the aftermath of the chilling Bible John killings, a wave of revelations swept through the shadows of Glasgow. A group of women had emerged, each with a harrowing tale of adult assault. Following encounters at the infamous Barrowland, amongst these brave souls was Hannah Martin, whose story would send shockwaves throughout the city and ignite a feverish search for answers. Martin's account pierced the darkness, as she claimed to have fallen victim to the clutches of Bible John himself. According to her testimony, she had endured a night of terror and was subjected to adult assault and violated. Later, on January 1970, at the Glasgow Royal Maternity Hospital, she would give birth to a daughter, whom she initially named Isabel. Said child was born from the depths of an unimaginable trauma. In April 1969, she had been entranced by the allure of the Barrowland, and she found herself in the company of a tall man, their lives entwined by a twist of fate. As the evening unfolded, their interactions took a sinister turn. Intoxication clouded Martin's senses and amplified her vulnerability to the man's demeanor as he grew increasingly aggressive. Paralyzed with fear, she could only watch as her world spiraled into chaos. The car ride was meant to offer solace. However, it had been transformed into a nightmare, where Martin had been overwhelmed with terror and succumbed to the depths of despair, her anguish manifesting in a release of vomit within the confines of the vehicle. In a cruel twist of fate, the man callously cast her aside, abandoning her on the desolate pavement, shattered and alone. In a chilling turn of events, the shadow of suspicion would fall on John Irvine McLeans in 1996, prompting the police to exhume his body. McLeans, a former member of the Scots Guard, had tragically self-terminated in 1980. However, it was a strange web of connections surrounding him that cast a haunting light upon his grave. Deep within the annals of the Bible John investigation, McLeans emerged as a figure of intrigue, a cousin to one of the original suspects, and a blood relative to a senior police officer. Such close proximity to the heart of the case had compelled authorities to scrutinize every detail of his personhood, seeking potential answers that may lay buried within his troubled existence. With anticipation, a DNA sample was carefully extracted from McLean's lifeless body. The focus on this scientific inquiry centered on the chilling link between McLean's and Helen Puttock, one of Bible John's victims. The stockings used as an instrument of her death held the promise of revealing their silent accomplice. The bodily fluid samples meticulously collected from those garments became the elusive key in unlocking the truth that had so long eluded justice. As a result, the painstaking analysis unfolded, and anticipation gripped the hearts of those who sought closure. Yet the elusive nature of the truth remained. The voice of authority, Lord Advocate Mackay, reluctantly proclaimed that the evidence at hand had fallen short of establishing a definitive link between the McLeans and the murder of Helen Puttock. The Crown would formally clear the McLeans of any involvement in the haunting Bible John murders in July 1996. His name being cleared of suspicion still left unanswered questions about the tale of Bible John. Within the mystery of Bible John, the figure of Peter Tobin emerges, casting a veil of suspicion over his potential link to Bible John. He was a convicted serial killer who had captivated the minds of criminologists and investigators alike, who tirelessly sought out the truth that lay hidden within the dark recesses of his past. In May 2007, Tobin was found guilty of a brutal murder of a Polish student by the name of Angela Kuluk, a crime characterized by her being violated, violence, and a callous stabbing to death. It was revealed that Tobin had relocated from his previous residence in Glasgow to England in August 1969, just prior to the final two murders directly attributed to Bible John. Curiously, it was at the Barrowland Ballroom where Tobin had executed his first wife. This would ignite a fateful connection to the heart of this chilling tale. His subsequent years would be spent dwelling in Brighton, alternating between Scotland and the southern regions of England. The ferociousness which Tobin attacked Angelica Kuluk, coupled with his efforts to conceal her lifeless body before fleeing London, pointed to the hand of a calculating, seasoned predator. Yet a discrepancy emerged. The public display of Bible John's victims was in stark contrast to Tobin's tendency to bury his own. The visual comparisons between Peter Tobin and the composite drawings of Bible John must be noted to have a striking resemblance. However, their hair color diverged, where Tobin's did not resemble the fiery red depicted in the artwork of Bible John. Criminologist Dave Wilson dedicated 3 meticulous years to this avenue of investigation. He staunchly supports the theory that Tobin is Bible John. The convergence of trial testimony from Tobin's case and the experiences of Dinah McNichol, one of Tobin's victims, along with Langford's conversation with Bible John on the night of her sister's murder, formed the bedrock of Wilson's compelling argument. However, DNA testing, hampered by the poor physical condition of the samples due to storage issues, presented a challenge in identifying any link between Bible John and Tobin. A police investigation was launched in 2006 to trace Tobin's movements and explore his potential connection to other crimes, yielded a woman's harrowing account of being viciously violated by Tobin after a meeting at the Barrowland Ballroom in 1968. This would be shortly after Bible John's first known murder. In a twist of fate, Tobin would be officially eliminated as a suspect by the police. This is due to the timeline of his relocation from Glasgow to Brighton, which is corroborated by marriage certificates and testimonies, which place him outside of the realm of Bible John's 2 final murders. Later, DNA analysis would conclusively exonerate Tobin, along with the bite mark on Helen's body failing to match any of his dental records. With the information gathered, a timeline can be formed to better understand the case. In 1968, Peter Tobin, a man who would later be linked to the Bible John case, meets his first wife at Barrowland Ballroom in Glasgow. In 1969, 3 incidents occur. First, in February, Patricia Docker is murdered after leaving the Barrowland Ballroom. In August, Jemima MacDonald is murdered after visiting the Barrowland Ballroom. Then finally, on October 31st, Helen Puttock is discovered dead behind a tenement in the Scotstoun district of Glasgow, her murder bearing striking similarities to the previous 2. In 1970, there is one incident. On January, Hannah Martin claims to have been violated by Bible John. Said incident would result in the birth of her daughter. Shortly after this, investigators create a composite drawing of Bible John based on the descriptions provided by Jean Langford. In 1980, John Irvine McLean's dies by self-termination at the age of 41. In 1996, John Irvine McLean's body is exhumed for DNA testing. However, he is cleared from any suspicion of being Bible John. In 2004, police announce plans to genetically test an individual in the attempt to find the perpetrator, and they are able to match the DNA from the crime scenes to an estimated 80% to another crime, minor though it may be, which had been committed 2 years earlier. In 2007, Peter Tobin is convicted of the murder of Angelica Kullock. Said crime has striking similarities to that of Bible John's murders. In 2010, Jean Langford, the only witness to engage in prolonged conversations with Bible John and be cognizant of said conversations, passed away at the age of 74. It must be noted that she had dismissed the theory of Peter Tobin being Bible John. Later, in 2013, Paul Harrison publishes a book claiming that Bible John was a police officer and recanting his theory of Peter Tobin being the culprit. The legacy of Bible John continues to cast a chilling shadow over Scotland as the search for answers remains elusive. Despite the tireless efforts of investigators, no conclusive evidence has surfaced to definitively attribute any further murders to Bible John. However, the manhunt that unfolded in the wake of his 3 heinous crimes stands as a testament to the gravity of the case and the fervent desire for answers. The unsolved murders of Helen Puttock, Jemima MacDonald, and Patricia Docker continue to haunt the collective consciousness of those who reside within Glasgow. These tragic events forever etched themselves in the memories of Scotland's criminal history, due to them unfortunately defying resolution. While their cases remain open, the likeliness of them being solved decreases by the day. However, debates persist amongst experts regarding whether these 3 murders were actually the work of a single perpetrator or if other factors such as copycat killings may have come to play. The 18-month gap between the first 2 killings has raised questions about the patterns which are typically associated with serial killers. Heavy criticism has been directed at the police, accusing them of prematurely assuming a connection between the murders. In a quest for answers, authorities would turn to genetic testing. Blood samples were requested from numerous men in the hopes of identifying the elusive perpetrator. The endeavor was prompted by the discovery of an 80% genetic match between the fluid samples from the final crime scene attributed to Bible John and DNA retrieved from a minor crime committed 2 years prior. There remains the possibility of a familial connection between the perpetrators. Tragically, this would not lead to the capture of Bible John. One of the few witnesses to have engaged in substantial cognizant conversation with Bible John, Jean Langford, would pass away in 2010. It was Langford's invaluable description of the suspect which helped craft the composite drawings that are now identified with Bible John. They remain as the critical clue to the perpetrator's appearance. As time passes, the tantalizing possibility of resolution slowly becomes a haunting uncertainty. As time marches on, the enigma of Bible John persists, leaving investigators and the public grappling with lingering questions. As the search for truth continues, if you remained with me until the end, I thank you, and I do hope you stay tuned and subscribe for more content.